Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna be tier ranking all the books that I have read in 2021. I don't want this video to be an hour long. I don't remember what it was last year, but I think it was really long, and I don't want this to be the case. So I'm not gonna go in depth in the description of the books. I'm gonna very quickly go over them and just immediately classify them. Now, the tier ranking that I've set up is based on Vines this year, because I miss Vines, and although TikTok has been really fun, these will always be iconic in my heart. So, our top tier is I Love You Bitch, I Ain't Never Gonna Stop Loving You Bitch. We all know this one.
I love you, bitch. Oh my god. I ain't gonna never stop loving you, bitch.
Then the second tier underneath it is That Was Legitness.
No. Yeah! That was legitness. Yeah, it was. Huh?
Afterwards, I have in the middle, Thought You Were Bae, Turns Out You're Just Fam. So this is for the average, I kind of liked it, but it's just not a 4-star liked it type of book.
I thought you were bae. Turns out you're just fam. Bruh.
Underneath it is an avocado, thanks. Like, I love avocados, but I just didn't expect that to be my Christmas gift, you know? So this is how I feel about these books. It's very much, it was okay, not for me though. Or potentially this could be for some of the DNFs that I've got in my list, because I personally didn't want to continue because I knew it wasn't for me, but I could see how it was a good book, well written, just not for me. So that will be that category. And then finally, at the very bottom is This Bitch Empty, Yeet.
Hey Tara, you want some? This bitch empty! Yeet!
These are the books that I actually want to actively yeet away from me. Let's start. So, first we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I did DNF this one after reading 300 pages, so I still left it in my red, because fuck that, that was like a full book reading moment. It just wasn't the full book because it was such a long book. So I'm gonna put this in an avocado, thanks, because I understand why people like it, it just wasn't for me. Next we have The Haunted Murders. This is a thriller, it's a classic Japanese murder mystery, and I absolutely adored that book. That was such a great discovery. So this one is going in I Ain't Never Gonna Stop Loving You Bitch. So next we have The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. This is basically a murder mystery with a POV in the past and a POV in the present, but it's also got ghosts, so it is slightly supernatural / paranormal, and I really enjoyed it. It was so fun. I think this goes in legitness. Next we have Hush Hush. Hush Hush was a dumpster fire. I hated this book so freaking much and I couldn't stop reading it. It was like watching a car crash happening in front of me. I just had to keep on watching even though I knew what was happening. So this is empty. This is empty and I'm eating it for sure. Then we have Angel's Blood. This was good but kind of forgettable. I feel like it's a just fam type of book. This is a supernatural romance book and I feel like they kind of all melt together in my mind because I made a couple of videos where I was reading all of the best books in supernatural romance or paranormal romance according to this Goodreads list. This was one of them and I feel like I'm mixing all of them up in my head because I read all of them almost at once. So this one goes there in fam, and same with Magic Bites, kind of similar to me. Next we have Anxious People by Frederick Backman. I have loved this book so much and recommended it to anyone who will hear me out. So this one is definitely I Ain't Never Gonna Stop Loving You. And also, just to give you a quick summary, this is an adult contemporary book about a failed bank robber who escapes by going to an apartment viewing and hides there and takes everyone there hostage, except there's a lot of different personalities with a lot of baggage in the room, and we have all of those different characters, and it's hilarious. It's also deep and touching and at times sad. It was such a good book. Next we have Bloody Sweet Volume 1 and 2. These are manhwas, I think, because I think they're Korean. So this was really fun. It was really sweet. It was a bit of a coming of age story and I quite enjoyed it. But I'd say it's more like in the average category category, so I'm going to put it as fam, both of those volumes. Next we have Waking Gods. This is a sequel to Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel, which is a sci-fi series, and it's one where people discover gigantic robotic body parts in the sea and everywhere, and they form this giant robot and realize that it's meant to help them defend themselves because aliens are coming to Earth, kinda. Didn't enjoy this as much as the first one, so this one is more like fam as well. It had some disappointing plot lines, including around motherhood, which I just wasn't there for. Next we have Daisy Jones and the Six. This one I loved. It was so fun. It was my second time reading a book by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I really enjoyed myself. I'm gonna put it as legitness. I think I rated it 5 stars originally, but I think it's more for legitness rather than I Never Gonna Stop Loving You in my head. Legend Bourne next is a YA fantasy novel. This kid is going to a new school, and when she gets there, she gets involved in this strange underground magical cult, I want to say, where their magic is linked to King Arthur legend stuff. That's the best way I can explain this. It was really fun, it was really fast-paced, but it was also a brick, which I kind of really enjoyed. But I'm gonna put it in That Was Legitness, because it was a really, really good book and I want to read the sequel to it. Then Cemetery Boys, I'm actually gonna put in I Ain't Never Gonna Stop Loving You. This was so fun. I loved everything about it. It gave me supernatural vibes, Buffy vibes, but with a trans main character. So our main character, this is a YA supernatural paranormal story, basically, and our main character, I forgot his name, but basically he's a trans boy who wants to be considered like all the other puho of his family. I'm not pronouncing this right, I'm sorry, but it's basically male witches in the Latin community. The male members of the family and the female members of the family don't have the same type of power, and he wants to be considered a puho, aka the male witches, who are allowed to help spirits pass away peacefully. And accidentally, on his first try, he summons the spirit of another boy from his school who has recently passed away, and tries to figure out how to, you know, send him back. But also there's someone who's disappeared, one of his cousins who was killed, and they're trying to figure out what happened. And what I loved about this book is that it's a standalone, and it really stood its ground as a standalone. It was so good. The ending was so satisfying, like it had true reader satisfaction. Like it was predictable, but it was still fun to read. So this goes in the top tier. Next, we have The Project by Courtney Summers. I really enjoyed myself, and I think for me, it goes in legitness because I just had a lot of fun with it. I see all the problems with it and I agree with them, but I still enjoyed myself, and that's what counts. Basically a YA mystery. It's not a thriller. I guess it's a thriller. Basically about this girl who tries to figure out how to help her sister, who was enrolled a long time ago in this cult that pretends to obviously not be a cult, as most cults do. And so she tries to help her by investigating it and, you know, infiltrating it herself and all that. Next we have The Ravens. This is, I'd say, YA/new adult because it happens in university, and our two main characters, it's two POVs, and they're both witches, one of whom has been part of this sorority/coven for a long time and is about to become its president, and the other one just discovers that she is a witch and gets enrolled by this sorority/coven on campus. And some shit happens in their coven and they're trying to figure it out, and although they hate each other at first, they have to set aside their differences and try to work together to figure it out. It was fun, but it was kind of average, and it was a little bit disappointing, and I want to read the next book, that's the thing, but it just kind of lacked in what I expected from the premise. So I'm gonna put it an avocado, thanks. Next we have Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Hake. This is non-fiction, it's very personal, it's basically his insight into his own struggles with mental health when he discovered he had depression and anxiety, and his anxiety attacks and all that, and it's really interesting to read from the point of view myself of someone who has had her own struggles with mental health, but very different, completely different. So it's really fascinating to read someone else's point of view and what they've had to experience, because every experience is different. So yeah, that's why I enjoyed it. So I'm going to put it in That Was Legitness. Next we have Bourne by Jeff Vandermeer, and do you know what, I only rated it a 4-star when I finished it, but I think I'm going to put it as top tier. Bourne is a weird sci-fi book, so it's adult, and it's basically in a post-apocalyptic world on Earth where our main character discovers she's like one of the survivors, and she finds this plant-like creature that she calls Bourne, and that she adopts almost like her own child. But it starts to grow, and in maybe some worrying ways, it becomes very, very smart and very skilled at killing people and her enemies and stuff like that. Very interesting, but mostly superbly written. Like, every time I think about this book and other books by Jeff Vandermeer, I'm thinking, I have so much to learn from this guy as an aspiring writer. So that's why it goes in the top tier for me. Next we have Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. This is contemporary, adult, and it's about this woman who thinks that she's completely fine living her life as she does, where she has zero social skills and kind of doesn't care about it. She'll say whatever she wants to people, she doesn't want to hang out with people, etc. But one day, her and this IT guy from her company save together this old man from the street who has like I think a stroke or a heart attack, I can't remember. Like, he falls down on the street. Basically, they both help him, and it kind of forms this bond all together, and she realizes maybe she is not completely fine. It was very interesting, but I was told this book almost in a way, I was told that it was going to be hilarious and really funny to read from that kind of point of view, and I didn't find that at all. I thought it was really grim and dark and gritty and very deep, but just maybe not for me and not what I expected. So this one, I think I'm going to put it as an avocado. Thanks. Next we have All Systems Red, the first novella in the Murderbot Diaries. This is sci-fi. And it's basically this rogue sec unit, so the security unit being that is rogue in the sense that it can override its protocols and its program, so it doesn't need to obey humans if it doesn't want to, but they don't know this. And all it wants to do is watch TV shows and be left alone. It's kind of antisocial, but it is on a mission on a planet to help this team of scientists, and so it doesn't really have a choice. But it's a hilarious series. It's also deep and touching at times and just heartwarming, and there's so much story of friendship, and it's, oh god, I love this series so much. I fell in love with it and the main character. I think this is my favorite character of the year that I have read. So this goes in I Am Never Gonna Stop Loving You, and I think I can already put the next ones in there as well, because I read all the 4 novellas that precede the full novel that I've just bought, but I haven't read it yet. So next is Rogue Protocol, that's the 3rd one, and the 4th one, Exit Strategy. There we go. So all of them are in there. Ring Shout is also going to go in there, actually. This is a novel by P. Jelly Clark, and this is adult fantasy, and it's basically in a different kind of alternate reality where the second coming of the KKK is brought upon by actual monsters from hell. This is the best way I've got to explain this, and our main character is kind of this girl who can fight with like a ghost sword, a supernatural sword type of thing, and she's part of this gang that is very Buffy-esque, I want to say, where they're fighting these monsters, and it's so fun. It was so fun and so fast-paced and so actiony, and it's exactly the type of book that I want to read more of, but I never find them, so I was super, super happy, and I loved this. Next we have the Decagon House Murders. This is another one that's going in top tier. This is so strange. I never expected it to be much fuller than the other tier, and so far my top tier is the one that has the most books in. Decagon House Murders is another Japanese classic murder mystery, and this one is very influenced by Agatha Christie's And Then There Went On. So good, so fun, really enjoyed this one. Next, the Sanitarium. Do you know what, I don't think I rated it that badly, but I want to put it in This Bitch Is Empty because I hate the main character so much. I was ready to embrace this book. I wanted to love it so much. This is a thriller, and I think, let me remember, I think it's basically this woman who gets an invite to her brother's engagement party in this hotel that's an old sanitarium in the mountains. But then someone disappears, someone is killed, and they have to figure out what's going on. Except our main character is an ex-cop. Like, she's a cop, but she's on a break because she's having an emotional breakdown about something. And she's there just on vacation, obviously. But then she's like, okay, I have to like start investigating what's going on. Except that all she did was very similar to what any civilian would do. Like, she just Google searched a lot of things. And I was like, this does not impress me much. And I was just not rooting for her at all because she was so annoying and so boring. And the entire time, it was just a pain. It was a pain to read from her point of view. So it's going in there. Even though overall the story wasn't that bad, and technically it should maybe be between An Avocado Thanks and You're Just Fam, but it's going in yeet. Okay, next we have Girls of Paper and Fire, and this is a YA fantasy novel that's quite old actually. Really enjoyed it. I'm gonna put it in That Was Legitness. Next we have The Deck of Foments. This is a sequel to a YA fantasy / urban fantasy, like paranormal type of story. I enjoyed myself. It was really fun. I almost feel like this should be in between these two rows. Like, it's legitness, but also it's just fam in the sense that it's a little bit forgettable. So I think I'm gonna put it in there. Next we have Empress of Sultan Fortune. This is a novella, a short story as well, and this was really fun. It's very strange and literary, so it was a little bit hard to know what was going on at first, but I ended up really enjoying that writing style. It's complete fantasy. I guess the story of this woman who was brought up on to become this empress, like she was taken by the emperor to become his wife because she's part of this clan or whatever, and he just wanted to make sure that the political relationships would go well, I guess. But once she gave an heir, she was kind of discarded and left for dead or whatever. And so this is kind of the story of how she's getting her revenge. But it is a novella, so it's quite short and fast-paced. So I'm gonna put it in That Was Legitness. Next we have Malibu Rising, another Taylor Jenkins read. This is the book that she had coming this year. This is going in legitness as well. It's not quite I Ain't Never Gonna Stop Loving You because it's my least favorite of all her books, but it's still amazing. It was still really good writing. This is in the 70s, I think, in Malibu. This family, that basically all the children of this famous singer who kind of left the picture, I guess. He does come back in the picture at some point in the story, but it's more about his kids and how they themselves rose to fame in their own manner. And then we have everything colliding, all of their life stories kind of colliding at this one event, this one yearly party that one of the kids does every year, basically, in her huge house in Malibu. And everything is happening there, and you have a lot of mess created by all the guests. And I guess the only reason it's not a 5-star for me is because there was a lot of POVs and it was a little bit confusing at times, but I did enjoy myself. It was really fun and really fast-paced. Next we have Good Girl, Bad Blood. This is the sequel to a YA thriller, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And this is the second book in the series. It was really, really fun. I'm gonna put it in legitness as well. I read a lot of good books this year. Next we have Every Heart a Doorway by Shannon Maguire. This is also a novella. It was really good, beautifully written. Definitely want to read the next ones. I think this was legitness. It's fantasy and it's about this school that helps kids that went to other worlds. So once they've come back from, say, Alice in Wonderland or the Narnia kids, stuff like that. It's not exactly those, but it's very similar, and it's all the children that have gone to another world, and once they come back, what happens to them, and it's kind of about that, so loved it. Next we have Cabo, Avalon High, and this was a reread. I think there was like a readathon that was like Arthurian themed, and I tried to participate, and I was like, I'm gonna read this one, but then I didn't participate much further, but I still had fun rereading this. It's a really cute story. I enjoyed myself. Next we have From Here to Eternity. This is actually a non-fiction book about this woman's stories as a mortuarian, I guess. So her experiences dealing with death. This was fascinating, taught me a lot of things that I didn't know. And I'm definitely going to put it in That Was Legitness. It was also my first audiobook ever, I want to say. Maybe my second, but it taught me that I could actually enjoy audiobooks. Next we have The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. This is young adult fantasy with basically all the daughters of famous fictional characters. There's the daughter of Dr. Jekyll / Mr. Hyde and things like that. I'm not explaining this very well, but they form an alliance and kind of this society to help other women like themselves and figure out who has made them into what they consider themselves to be monsters. So very fun. I would definitely want to read the next one, but it's more like an average read when I think back on it. So this is gonna go in Just Fam. Next we have Opal and Nev, the final revival of Opal and Nev. This was a very similar story to Daisy Jones and the Six in the sense that it's also a series of interviews and things like that rather than one narrative, and it is about a music group and a musical legend, fictional, who is called Opal, and basically her story also with an incident that happened due to some racist assholes coming up to a concert or something like that. This is all I can kind of tell you about this book without going into spoilers, but it was really, really fun and definitely legitness. It's up there. It's to the same level as Daisy Jones in my head. Next we have A Dead Gin in Cairo. This is a short story as well. I think there's two. There's The Haunting of Trumpcar 015, and they're both by P. Jelly Clark as well. The same guy who wrote Ring Shout, and these are in an alternative Cairo where I think it's like in the past as well, in like the 1920s or something, I might be wrong, but basically it's in an alternative Cairo where the universe has opened up to another universe where monsters are coming from, but also jinns and things like that, basically supernatural creatures, and we're following in both different characters that are part of this supernatural police, kind of. Really, really fun, really fast-paced, enjoyed myself so much. I wouldn't say it's quite as amazing as Ring Shout, so it's gonna go in legitness, both of those. Next we have Foxes and also Tigers. Both of those were the sequels to Stags was the first book, then we have Dogs, then Foxes, then Tigers. And these books are in a series where this girl in high school, so this is YA, joins up this very elitist school for rich kids. And what happens is that she gets invited by some of the kids at school with the other outcasts, I want to say, to participate in this event that's like at one of their parents' house in the countryside, but it turns out that at this fun party they're actually being hunted. So this is really fun and I really enjoy the whole series. The follow-up were kind of sometimes a little bit repetitive, and also our main character kind of got on my nerves every now and then, but it was overall really enjoyable. I'm gonna put it in fam because I feel like that's accurate. Next we have The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendricks. This is horror, this is like a slasher type of horror, and this is about an anonymous group of final girls who meet up to get therapy, basically, about being the final girls in their own stories where serial killers have tried to kill them. And in this one, basically, our main character thinks that someone's onto them and trying to kill them one by one, but she's also paranoid, so it's hard to know who you can trust. And it was really fast-paced, actiony and all that, a little bit weird at times, and I didn't always enjoy the writing style somehow, but I still enjoyed myself, so I'm gonna put it in fam. Next we have The Fixer by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is a very Veronica Mars type of story. It's YA mystery, and it's basically this girl who moves with her sister, realizes that her sister is actually considered kind of a fixer amongst the high-ranking people in the city because she helps fix any problems that they may have, and she kind of starts becoming the same thing for her kids for the kids at her school. So this was fun, very Veronica Mars vibes, and I love everything written by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Like, I just love her writing style so much. This is gonna go in legitness. Then we have The Wisteria Society for Lady Scoundrels. This is a historical romance book, and it's really, really funny. It was just so much more hilarious than I expected. I'm gonna put it in legitness as well. Next we have I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle Mcnamara. This is a non-fiction book about the Golden State Killer. There's not much else to say, but I thought it was amazing to read now that he's actually been caught, and he hadn't at the time she wrote it, and she died before finishing the book, but her husband helped put it together, and so it was really interesting to see all the stuff that she had discovered before she even knew who it was, now that we actually know who it is. So, legitness. Next we have Frankenstein. I really hated it. I know that it's a classic, it just was not for me, but it is technically a good book. It just wasn't horror, it was more philosophy rather than anything else, so it's gonna go in an avocado, thanks. Next we have The Cousins by McManus, and this is another young adult thriller. I've read a lot of those this year. This is about a bunch of cousins from a rich family. Their grandma is the one who owns all the money, but she has kind of said to her kids, you can't come back here, get out of here, never to get their money again, never to see her again. But the kids all get invited at her summer summer resort or whatever on this island, and they all go thinking that they can rekindle the relationship with her and try and figure out the mystery of why their parents were told to leave. So this was really interesting. I thought it was really good as a standalone, and I really love Karen McManus' writing in general. This is going in legitness as well. Next we have Sleepy Hollow. It's another classic and another disappointment. I actually don't think it's good. I actually think it is good if you want to be hungry, because there's a lot of mentions of food in this book, so much food descriptions, and not a lot of horror. So it is not a horror novella. Like, I just didn't think it was, you know. I love the movie, so that's why I read it, but yeah, no, this bitch is empty. Next we have The Shadows, and this is the second book. It's not part of a series, but the first book was The Whisper Man, and I guess there's references to The Whisper Man in The Shadows. This was a thriller, an adult thriller, really spooky at times, really fun and fast-paced as well. So in The Shadows, we follow two POVs, and one of them is this cop she is trying to investigate this murder that's just happened, and it's pretty clear-cut who killed this kid. It's two of his friends or something like that. But it turns out it's a little bit more complicated than that, and she links it back to a very old murder case. And the old murder case is about this kid who basically said, I can have lucid dreams, and in order to become all-powerful and just walk in the dreams universe instead of in real life and disappear completely, I have to sacrifice this other kid. So that's what he does. And then we have the POV of a surviving kid from that time. Like, he's an adult now, and he is basically telling the story about how, like, we get flashbacks from his POV of when that happened, when the first murders happened. Did enjoy it. I thought, just in general, every time I read a book by Alex North, I quite enjoy it, and I think that they're really well written. So I'm gonna put this one in legitness because I just had a lot of fun. Next we have The Greek Coffin Mystery by Ellery Queen. This is a classic mystery, and it was so freaking boring and really aged badly. I thought so, at least. Like, the writing style is just so old and hard to follow, and it was just very slow paced, and it's just not for me. I'm gonna put it in This Bitch Is Empty because I regretted so much picking this one up. Next we have The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. This one I freaking adored. Like, no, you're not going in legitness. You're going in I Ain't Never Gonna Stop Loving You. Because honestly, this is the second book in the series. The first one is The Thursday Murder Club, and it's basically this group of old people in a retirement village who decide to investigate true crime because they love true crime, and then one day there's an actual murder that happens in their retirement village, so they decide to investigate it. Really funny, but the second book was even more so. It was more hilarious, the storyline was better, the characters were even more deep and profound and real, and I just wanted to hug all of them so freaking badly. I adored this book, and when I finished it and closed it, I was like, what do I do with myself? So this book is top tier. Anyway, next I actually read a book I hated, which is Nothing But Blackened Teeth. It's a novella, it's horror, and it's about this bride who's obsessed with haunted houses and decides that she wants to have, like, I guess, like, her wedding or like her pre-wedding party or something in one of them, and this group of friends finds themselves in this haunted house in Japan. Except that it's actually haunted, it's not fake. But it was very metaphorical, as in, like, she uses a lot of metaphors and similes in her writing style, which made it really hard to be scared. Like, I wasn't scared once. It was just not the right writing style for this. It just did not work at all. I hated this book so freaking much. It was bad. I regretted reading it, but also I couldn't DNF it because it was a novella, it was so short. What was the point? Next we have Into the Drowning Deep, and this is horror full novel, adult, and it's by Mary Grant, and basically this is about killer mermaids. I think this is the best summary you can get for this, and I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. This is going in legitness. Next we have The Hunting Wives. This was trash, absolute fucking trash. This is an adult thriller, and I mean, can I actually call it a thriller when the murder happens page 240? Yeah, that's how long it took for it to become a thriller in my mind, and therefore it goes in the bottom tier. Also, the main character was absolutely awful. She just made all the wrong choices all the time, and it was just really painful to read from her POV because I could not have rooted for her for the life of me. I actually wanted her to become a victim and die because she annoyed me just that much. So yeah, this was bad. How to Solve a Murder, non-fiction written by two people, so like a man and his wife who both worked in Guy's Hospital in the forensics unit to help solve murders. It was interesting at times, but kind of lacked a proper storyline and plotline. Like, it was just a little bit loose stories here and there. And so I think this kind of goes into You're Just Fam. This is the last row. Next we have Rules for Vanishing. This is young adult, paranormal, it's a ghost story. This girl tries to find her sister who left looking for the ghost of another girl. And I don't know how else to explain this without giving spoilers. It's very weird and very, I don't know how, like it's kind of like going on a quest, but there's ghosts and it's spooky. It was really, really scary at times, really enjoyed it. This one, do you know what? This one, definitely legitness. This was so good. Next we have Dune. I think I don't need to explain what Dune is. It was legitness. It was really fun. I enjoyed myself. It felt more young adult than I thought it would. I felt like everyone was talking about it like it was so complicated to follow, and I was like, yeah, apart from some hard words to pronounce, it was quite fast-paced and easy. So yeah. Next we have The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. This one is another adult sci-fi novel. It's very space opera and like it's very found family story, and it felt more like watching a sci-fi TV show, kind of like Stargate, Star Trek-ish, rather than just a simple plot of, you know, beginning, middle, end. It felt like it had several smaller plots within one book, so it was hard to fall into and really properly enjoyed at the beginning, but by the end I fell in love with everyone. I loved everything. It was so good and I really wanted to read the next one. So this one goes into legitness. Next we have The Love Hypothesis. This is a hyped up book from TikTok. It's romance and it's basically this woman who fake dates this guy because she wants her best friend to think it's okay to date her ex, because she doesn't actually care about her ex, and her best friend is holding it off on it and is like, no, I'm not going to do that, it's going to hurt you. And she's like, no, please go. And because she won't listen to her, she's like, I'm actually dating someone, you don't have to worry about me. And she grabs the first guy that she sees, and it turns out to be this guy at her university. She's like working on a PhD and he's like one of the professors there, and he's considered an asshole by everyone, and they have so much chemistry. It was so good. It was really fun to read. Couple of things that took me out of the story a little bit, but overall really good. This was legitness. Next we have Mary Jane, coming of age story, a little bit similar, I guess, to Daisy Jones and the Six and stuff like that, because it involves a lot of music, but it's also about discovering sexuality and what drugs are and rock and roll in general, I guess. This is about a girl who finds herself nannying for the summer for this family where the dad is a therapist, and one of his clients comes over for the summer to stay with him because he's basically trying to stop doing drugs, and he's a really famous rock star and his wife is a really famous movie star. And so this girl who comes from a very strict and conservative family discovers everything about the world, really. It was really fun. I enjoyed myself so much, even though originally I didn't think I would, but this goes into legitness as well. Next we have To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. This is a huge break of a sci-fi book, adult, very movie-like, super fast-paced, aliens stuff and fights between ships and stuff like that. I think this is the best I can give you of a summary. This is going, and I love you, bitch. I didn't expect it to. I don't think I rated it 5 stars, but I actually loved that book. It was so much fun. Then next we have None Shall Sleep. This is a book I got on my Kindle, and it's a young adult / new adult. No, it's not a young adult. There's a lot of gore and blood involved. It's definitely more of a new adult book. This girl is basically hired by the FBI because she survived. She's a final girl. She survived serial killer killing all of her friends, and she is hired by the FBI as part of this program in the 80s to interview serial killers who are on the juvenile side, because she herself is quite young, she's like 18, and they won't listen to adults or something. But obviously it's because also they want to catch this other serial killer, and they think that one of the guys that she's interviewing knows where this serial killer is or who he is or something like that. Really fun, very Mindhunter / Criminal Minds, but kind of more fanfiction-ish, and I really enjoyed myself. I really enjoyed myself. This is legitness for sure. Next we have Ace of Spades, which is the last book I actually finished this year. And this is the story of a kid in two kids, because we have two POVs, in a really prestigious high school. They're the only two black kids there, and they realize that they're being targeted by this anonymous texter that calls itself Aces, and that is trying to ruin their lives by revealing all their secrets. Very Gossip Girl meets Pretty Little Liars meets Get Out, and it was really dark and grim and depressing most of the time, so I didn't have that much of a good time, but it was well written. I'd say the ending was really rushed. A lot of passages were like jumping from one scene to the next without pause, and it was a little bit confusing at times because of that. And I don't think it lived up to the hype that a lot of people put on this book, and so therefore for me it's just fam. Such a fun age, I DNF'd it. I just couldn't read it. It bored me so much. The main characters were awful, and I guess it's well written, it's just not for me, so I'm definitely putting it in an avocado thanks. Crave is just badly written. It's just awful, and because I put myself through Hush Hush, Crave is really similar. Both of these books are basically rip-offs of Twilight, and with the least amount of writing style I've ever seen. Like, it's just it feels like someone published a Wattpad story without editing a single thing in it. So it was trash, absolute trash, and I couldn't read more than a certain amount. So this bitch is empty, and I DNF'd it. Certain Dark Things by Sylvia Moreno Garcia is a urban fantasy paranormal thing about vampires and vampire clans against each other and that kind of stuff in Mexico City. And I love Sylvia Moreno Garcia. She's one of my favorite authors because I adored the two other books that I've read by her. But even though this book should be everything I love, it just wasn't it. It was so boring. I just couldn't get into it. It was just really slow paced and boring me. So I think this is probably for other people than for me. So it goes into an avocado thanks. And that's it. That's my final tier ranking. And I'm pretty freaking happy to see that most of the books that I have read this year are in the top 2 tiers, and I have quite a lot in both of those. Yeah, that's it. That's the last video I'm filming this year because today is the actual 31st of January. I don't know when I'm gonna post this video, hopefully very soon. But yeah, I've enjoyed myself in 2021. I'm really happy with my reading choices and with my DNFing choices. I didn't waste too much time on books I wasn't enjoying. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, leave a comment. I always try to respond. Consider subscribing, ring that bell, all that jazz, and I will see you guys in the next one.